Now, Nick Pope, a man who hasn't been on this show for a few years, the man who used to be the official Ministry of Defence, government in other words, UFO investigator. He left the MOD. He's now in the United States.
Yes, it's good to be back on the show.
And Nick, what do you call yourselves these days? I am a little confused.
Well, I guess I do a whole range of things. Consultancy for Hollywood film companies and some freelance broadcasting and journalism. But I think one of the things that I enjoy most is my association with various sci-fi movies and TV shows. And that's consultancy, it's spokesperson work, it's public relations. And I've been involved in some of the biggest and most iconic shows and movies of the years, and it's great fun. And I've written a bit of sci-fi myself, of course, so I come at it with two hats on, my former MOD UFO investigator hat and my sci-fi author hat.
Now look, we've all got to make a living and we all have to do what we have to do. What would you say to those serious and hardened UFO people out there, and you know that they have their say online about you, and some of them love you and some of them don't, who would say that you've sold out the serious investigation to go to Hollywood?
Well, I would say, firstly, get over yourself. If you can't have a little bit of fun in life, what's it all about? But the other thing is, I think that what I do when I'm involved with some of these movies and TV shows is try to add some authenticity, some realism. And people often complain and skeptics say, all these UFO sightings and alien abduction stories, they get it all from sci-fi. Actually, no. It's as much the other way around. If you look at shows like The X-Files, you find that people like Chris Carter, the creator and lead writer, does research so well. He goes out into the UFO community. He's been to conferences, he's read all the stuff. So when you see that kind of thing in shows like The X-Files, it's because the work's been done properly. So in one respect, I would say that hopefully I am adding that authenticity. I mean, this was my government job, and if I can bring a flavour of that to some of the fiction, then I think that's a good thing.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a while, but I want to talk about that government job because a lot of people today will be very surprised, possibly gobsmacked, at the fact that you were employed by our Ministry of Defence to do something that so many of us would love to have done for a living, and that is to collate reports from the public and members of the armed services, police and whatever, of strange and anomalous phenomena in our skies and around our nation. Talk to me about that job.
Well, the job itself dated back to the 50s, and it's to the fact that people, often our own Air Force pilots, were seeing things, strange things in the sky that they couldn't identify, and sometimes tracking them on military radar too. And we were not in the business, and nor should we have been, of ignoring those kind of high-quality reports. Now, that job ran for many years. I did it for much of the early 90s. I should say it was only one posting out of a much wider 21-year Ministry of Defence career, which saw me do all sorts of other weird and wonderful things too. But I very much enjoyed the post. As you say, it's a job that a lot of people would absolutely kill for, I'm sure. It was by far and away, I think, the most interesting and maybe in a sense quirky job in the Ministry of Defence. And although the MOD's UFO project was axed in 2009 as part of a series of defence cuts, the actual additional cost to the taxpayer was never that much, because all the things you need to investigate UFOs were already there. Our military radar systems, our experts in analysing photos and videos. So this job was done really with existing resources, largely.
Did anybody ever tell you in the years, and you'll tell me how many years that was, that you did that job, what your remit was, what they wanted you to deliver?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from day one, the terms of reference were very clear. My job was to research and investigate the UFO phenomenon, and specifically the sightings that were reported to us on a daily basis, investigate them and determine whether there was evidence of anything of any defense significance to the United Kingdom, either a potential threat or indeed a potential opportunity, I suppose.
So that suggests, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that suggests, doesn't it, Nick, and this is a fascinating point, that somebody somewhere at some level believed indeed that these things may have been a threat, or indeed, as you say, an opportunity. Somebody somewhere senior within the MOD believed that these things might well exist.
Absolutely. Now, I think there's a counter-argument that says, yes, that would apply equally if these things were Russian as opposed to Martian. But you're absolutely right. Over the years, there have been a whole string of people at very senior level, including defense ministers, who have been believers, some have been skeptics, and some have been right in the middle. One of the amusing stories that I like to tell is after I left the UFO job, when I was in security, I got a call from one of the ministers, one of the defense ministers' outer offices, and I was told minister wanted a briefing on UFOs.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, I don't do that anymore. You should go to Directorate of Air Staff and they'll give you the official brief. The private secretary said to me, no, minister doesn't want all that no defence significance you trot out to Parliament and the public. Minister wants a proper briefing.
And in their terms, what was a proper briefing? What did they want you to say? How honest did they want you to be?
Well, proper briefing was doing more than, as I say, just trotting out this lazy, no defence significance soundbite that we peddled, I'm afraid, with apologies, to both Parliament, the media and the public. We said we significantly downplayed the true extent of our involvement in this and of our interest in it. Behind closed doors, I think we were much more open-minded and doing much more on this, classified intelligence studies, that sort of thing, than we ever let on to Parliament and the media.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that in one of our many conversations together when you were in the UK. That's fascinating. Did anybody in all of that time ever say to you, Nick, you've been working for us here, collating these reports, doing a great job, are you a believer?
Oh, yes, absolutely. People came up to me in the corridors all the time, and it was a widely known job in the department. I mean, everyone knew we had this kind of X-Files job, and indeed, the X-Files started showing pretty much when I was in the middle of that tour of duty, so the parallels were quite obvious, and people would come up and start whistling the theme tune to me in the corridor, and they would say, "Come on, Nick, what's going on? What do you believe? What's really going on? What's going on in room?" It was 8245, I think, at the time.
Right. Okay, well, that's interesting. And to be on at the same time, or to be doing your job at the same time as the X-Files, can't have been the easiest of experiences. As we wrap up this first segment, I just want you to revisit something that you told me a long time ago. There was a percentage that you used to use for the number of reports that you felt were credible versus the ones you felt really could be explained in a rational way. It's an interesting figure. Can you remember it?
The one that I think I quoted was 80% of UFO sightings can be explained as misidentifications, hoaxes or delusions. 15% of cases there's insufficient data to make a proper determination, a definitive assessment, and 5% unknown.
Okay, and even if 5% turned out to be something that maybe came from somewhere far away from here, and the other 95% were complete garbage, we are still looking at something that could change our perception of everything we know.
Absolutely, and you don't even need the 5%. The believers only need to be right once.
I want to ask you about a couple of things that are very current. One is the increasing groundswell momentum this year of 2016 for this thing called disclosure. So first of all, what is disclosure? How likely is it that we're going to get it? And if we get it, what will we do about it? Disclosure, kind of spelt by the UFO community with a capital D, is basically that archetypal, stereotypical view. The president goes on TV, my fellow Americans, people of the world, we are not alone. Actually, there's no problem with any president or prime minister saying that. The constitutional problem would arise with the unstated postscript, which would be, by the way, we've lied to you about this for 70 years. So I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think it depends, of course,
self-evidently on what there is to disclose. Is there literally, as some people believe, a spaceship in a hangar, or is it just a little bit more nebulous than that? Is it the fact that, yes, we have these unexplained sightings, and no, we don't necessarily know what they are, but we can't, even within government, quite put our finger on it. So that's one issue. Now, the second issue is this is becoming something of an election issue here in the United States. Hillary Clinton and her campaign manager, President Obama's former chief of staff, John Podesta, have made quite a lot of surprising statements about wanting to reopen UFO investigations, wanting to know what's going on at Area 51. And Donald Trump has yet to say anything about this, or he won't hold back. So it could be an interesting election campaign.
Now, do you think, as some people that I'm hearing out of the United States saying at the moment, that Hillary Clinton is beginning to backpedal a little bit on this?
Well, I think she'd be very wise to, actually. I think it's a mistake to try and make this an election issue. Americans don't really, for all the kind of talk about this in the media, the real issue I think that people are always interested in is the economy, jobs, the terror threat, the taxes, those sorts of things. And I think a candidate runs a huge risk by talking about this, because it's very easy to see that somebody like Donald Trump could say, well, I am interested in jobs and the economy and taxes, and my opponent is interested in space aliens.
Right, so there's a clear and present political reason for not being quite as interested.
Yes, I think she'd be advised to back off it, and if asked, to say that her interest in this is really just a commitment to open government and freedom of information.
Right. If we look back at the history of recent presidents, though, Hillary's husband, Bill, it was rumoured for a very long time, my memory goes back that far, that he was going to be the one who would disclose, and he didn't really. They said when Obama came in, this is the man who's going to do it. Now they're saying that Hillary Clinton might be a little bit more open. As members of the public and interested individuals who read the popular press, what are we to believe?
Well, I think this just goes to show that disclosure is a bit like tomorrow. Maybe it never comes. President Carter saw a UFO. Ronald Reagan saw a UFO and spoke about his belief in a famous speech at the United Nations, where he said, I occasionally think how quickly we would set aside our differences if we faced a threat from beyond this earth. Bill Clinton reportedly, when he first became president, said, I want to know two things. What's going on at Area 51? Are there aliens? And did JFK really die as the result of a lone gunman or conspiracy? And apparently he didn't get definitive answers on either issue.
Because it seems to work there like it works here, that you have a civil service and you have vested interests who keep the lid on these things. And as much as a politician may go into a campaign saying, I am going to be the one who does this, the practicalities begin to bite you on the bottom when you actually get in the office.
Indeed they do.
Okay, there is a great groundswell, though, still building. People like Steve Bassett, who I know you will know and have done conferences with, he is saying that they're going to lobby Washington even more intensively than they have in the past, and they are going to get disclosure. Do you think that him and people like him have any great hope?
Well, I'd like to think so, but again, I think there are bigger issues that really affect most people. And earlier you said, what, and we haven't gotten onto this, you said, well, what would happen if there was disclosure? And in a sense, yes, it would be, I suppose, the most astounding and amazing announcement of all time. We'd still all have to go to work the next day. We'd still all have to pay our mortgages, pay our taxes and things. So, you ask what would change? The answer, I think, is everything and yet nothing.
Once you told me that you felt the Rendlesham Forest case, which of course is Britain's most famous UFO case, and I think, were you in post in 1980 when that happened, or was it before your time?
It was before my time, but in 1993 I did a cold case review of it, so
okay.
I absolutely know all about that one.
Well, I don't think I'm being unfair to you if I say that you always thought that if anything was likely to have been the real deal, and we still don't know what it was, even after all this time with people still coming out of the woodwork and talking about it, if anything was likely to have been the real deal, this was it. Do you still feel that way?
Yes, I do, and I think Roswell's a fascinating case, but it's now almost 70 years in the past, and pretty much all the original witnesses have passed on. So Rendlesham Forest is perhaps our best case, and the witnesses are much alive and well and talking through the internet, through social media in a way that the Roswell witnesses never really could or did. So yes, it's a perfect storm of a UFO case. Multiple witnesses, 3 different nights, radar, physical traces on the ground, including landing marks and radioactivity levels assessed by the MOD's defense intelligence staff as being significantly higher than background. Almost everything you could want for in a case that makes it interesting and compelling is in that one case, Rendlesham.
You're in the US. It's harder for them if they were inclined to get you, so you can tell me this now. This year it is being claimed, I think 1, maybe 2 radar operatives have come out and given their testimony to various people. It is claimed that there were nuclear weapons being stored at RAF Bentwater's Rendlesham Forest, and that is what any ET contact may have been about. Can you confirm tonight that there were nuclear weapons there?
I can't neither confirm nor deny that. I am still bound by the Official Secrets Act. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm somebody who commentates on this issue legitimately, just as, say, a retired military officer would go on a radio or TV show and talk about Afghanistan and Iraq. But I'm not in the business of divulging classified information, and that's still, I'm afraid, a neither confirm nor deny.
You know I had to ask, and I have before. But I'm sure you can agree with me that it would be an interesting motivation if anybody from outer space were to come down here to find out what was going on. And I'm sure you've heard the reports of various American nuclear missile bases being stopped in their tracks and effectively taken offline by strange presences. So, it follows a long line of these things. Were that to have been the case?
Absolutely, and there's no getting away from the fact that if we were visited, I'm sure our weapons of mass destruction, for whatever reason, would be something of particular interest. Just as if we were visiting other civilizations, I'm sure we'd want to know what's the biggest threat that you pose, and what's the cutting edge of your technology.
All that work with you did with the MOD, Nick, and I want to move on from this in our next segment, but just to close out this one, all those years of work with the MOD, do you feel it was worthwhile as you look back on it? Yes, absolutely. It was, I think, the most fascinating job that I did in my wider 21-year career, and hopefully I took forward our understanding of this, even if not necessarily in terms of anything for public consumption. But all that research and investigation I did is out there, and indeed some of it is now being declassified and released by the government itself. Let's continue with this, Nick. I don't know whether you check out the British newspapers if you get a chance to on a Sunday. Do you get to see them there?
No, but I look online when I can, so I try to keep up to date.
Well, fascinating thing in the Sunday Express today, you may have seen it, you may not, that seems to be exclusive to them. A former soldier in a new book apparently claims that he was repeatedly abducted by aliens and even subjected to mind control experiments that involved the British Army. Astonishing claims, says the paper, made in a new book about the life of a man called Bill Brooks. He's 66 now. The book is called 44. That was the age he was when he had his first abduction experience, it is alleged. Mr. Brooks apparently claims in the book, ghost written by an alien abduction expert called Joanna Summerscales, who I'm going to try and get on this show at some point, you may be aware of. Apparently he first began being taken onto spaceships as a child. I'm not expecting you to have seen this, but what do you make of it?
I did actually see the headline. I glanced at the story. I confess that I haven't looked at it in any detail yet. I mean, there's a slight, I suppose, smile and rolling of the eyes when I get to stuff like this. And there's an old saying in the intelligence analysis community. Interesting if true. And I honestly think that's about all I can say with something like that. What I can just briefly confirm, I guess, is that the name of the individual and the story is not known to me from any defense or army files. So maybe he is a veteran, but even if he is, I'm not aware of any of his stories ever having found their way into the MOD's UFO project files.
Of course, he may just be somebody who's only come out and talked about it now. That's what we're being told, but I quite understand what you say. Ms. Summerscales, quoted in the paper, says, Bill's memory has, quotes, been compromised to a great degree, which he believes is due to the many abduction events and mind control methods used by not only ET, but the military. The MOD denies the claims, says the paper, and says it has no involvement in mind control or aliens. I'm guessing that would be the kind of response you would have expected and might even have issued yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's no getting away from the fact that the Americans did dabble briefly in mind control back in the 60s. You know, there were programs looking at, for example, LSD. There was a program known as MK Ultra, and various governments have had so-called remote viewing projects. And the flip side of that is remote influencing. But I do not believe the British government has got involved in any of this. We had a remote viewing project or study a few years ago. That's been declassified now. But all these stories of the military themselves abducting people and doing things like this, I'm afraid that sounds to me more like science fiction than science fact.
I've interviewed over the years of doing this show in various places a lot of people who claim that they have been abducted. Some of their stories have remarkable similarities. Some of them go off at all kinds of tangents. One of the people that I have talked to who seems to have his feet very firmly nailed to the ground is a councillor in Yorkshire, in Whitby, called Simon Parks. I did a whole hour with him. I'm sure you're aware of him. He says he's been abducted his whole life. His claims are truly extraordinary, the extent to which they, in inverted commas, have had contact with him, he says. What do you make of stories like that?
Again, I'm afraid it's the old interesting if true thing. You know, I would say, and I'm not being entirely tongue-in-cheek here, I'm saying all these people who claim to have been abducted and taken on spaceships, you know, just next time you're up there, just take one little artifact. You know, all we need is some little widget that says made in Alpha Centauri or something. Get it to the scientific community, have it analyzed, and then we can stop debating about this. We'll know.
You are so well connected. You're in the United States now. You know a lot of people. You and I have talked both off and on air about all of the things that you know and the people that you come into contact with. Are you frustrated that in all of these years of being interested in all of this, nobody said, Nick, as long as you keep quiet about it, maybe this has happened, and maybe you can't tell me. But anyway, as long as you keep quiet about it, Nick, come to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and in here we've got a hangar that has all of the exotic materials that we have been collecting since the 1940s. If that hasn't happened, it must frustrate you. If it has happened, please tell me tonight.
Well, it hasn't happened.
Okay.
That, as I said earlier in the show, might just reflect the fact that there really isn't a spaceship in a hangar at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. But yeah, if there is, I would love to get that call. And if Hillary Clinton is elected president and does find that there is truth in any of this, well, I would love to, I'm sure, become some sort of special advisor on the subject.
Now, when the phone goes in Nick Pope Towers in the United States these days, and you get a call from Mr. Ratzenberg, Katzenberg, Matzenberg, whatever, in Hollywood, wanting to book you for a big movie project, how does that go? How does that conversation work? What do they ask you for?
Well, basically, it could be a couple of things. It could be a consultancy in terms of what sorts of things do people report, shapes of UFOs, types of aliens, you know, so plot development, stories, that sort of thing. Or it could just be being a spokesperson for the movie, going on various TV, radio shows and talking about it, talking about how how true it is to real life in terms of what people see and report.
Do you find that the information that you're able to give appears in the form that you delivered it to them? In other words, if you tell them the average UFO shape is this, does that translate into what appears in the movie or the TV show? Do they listen to you?
They do, but sometimes, obviously, people want to go down their own path, and sometimes things do get fictionalized to slightly beyond the point that I'd recognize. But I think that's, if you're making a documentary, and I've made plenty of those, that's fine. You expect people to stick to the facts. But if somebody is simply doing sci-fi, then that's a creative process, and all you can ever do is feed something in and be a part of it. You wouldn't expect it to be faithfully reproduced. After all, people have got to entertain as well as inform.
We said at the top of this that there are some people in the UK who see you as a merchant of disinformation. Do you find the Americans have a more open-minded attitude to you?
I think so, but there's no getting away from one's past, and I think to some people I will always be the bad guy. I will always be the person that did this for the government, and to some people in the UFO and conspiracy theory community, I'm part of the cover-up. I'm part of the conspiracy. I'm one of the real-life men in black. There's nothing I can do to stop people believing that, I'm afraid.
Are there men in black, Nick? I say this for a reason, and I may have told you this story before, and it's a true story. It's something that happened when I was doing this show on our sister station TalkSport about 12 years ago. I spoke to the former Defence Minister of Canada, a man who believes that UFOs are more than we've been told. A very, very interesting man, this guy. And, we ran the interview, and the following week I was leaving this building with my producer, Dave, and we walked down the steps in Hatfields here in London, a very quiet place on a Saturday night as it was. And Dave said, "You ain't going to believe this." And he pointed across the road to what was normally an empty street. And there was a black limousine, as we would call it, a Jaguar as they call it in America, and two guys in the front who looked like the Blues Brothers with black suits, white shirts and black ties. Anchored to the front of this car's dashboard was a camera that was following us. Literally, the lens was pointed at the pair of us as we walked down the street. Now, either that was the world's greatest hoax and joke by somebody, and I've never found out about it since, or perhaps we do have men in black here. What do you think?
Well, it's possible, but on the other hand, if you were really wanting to conduct covert surveillance, I don't think it would be done in such an obvious way, in a way that conforms absolutely to the stereotypical view of this. I mean, I think if it was real-life surveillance, it would just be a battered old Ford, and you wouldn't even see the camera. So I'm afraid for something like that, I do suspect either it was a practical joke, or people on their way to a costume party, or somebody shooting a movie, or any one of a number of different possibilities. But in one way, that drawing attention to yourself is the last thing that you would do in genuine covert surveillance.
And the name of that Defence Minister, of course, Paul Hellyer, it's just come to me. When you left the MOD, did they allow you to take the files with you?
No, absolutely not. Having said that, the Ministry of Defence is pretty much coming to the end now of what will be an 8-year program to declassify and release this material and publish it at the National Archives. And I've been involved in that process as a spokesperson. I've written feature articles in the media every time some of these files are released. So, yeah, I didn't get to keep them, but I am now getting to see them again, which is something of an interesting blast from the past.
As they're being released, presumably.
Yes, indeed, or just a little bit before so that I can preview them.
Really? So you do get a chance, you do have a little bit of special access. Of all those cases in all those box files, which is the one that in the years that you worked for the MOD was truly unexplained for you?
Well, I think one called the Cosford incident from 1993, where we had, over a period of about 6 hours, sightings up and down the country, multiple police witnesses, and 2 Air Force bases, RAF Cosford and RAF Shawbury, were overflown by a huge triangular-shaped craft, which was virtually hovering on occasion, and then shot off to the horizon at immense speed, and we never explained that one, needless to say.
And presumably you talked to witnesses, and if you did, what did they tell you?
I interviewed all the witnesses, as I say, lots of police, lots of military, one civilian who said that at first all he saw was the stars just appearing to go out one by one, and then he gasped in shock and horror as he realized that they were going out because a huge object the size of a football field was just silently passing over his head at a height of maybe no more than 200 feet.
These seem to be like common factors in these cases, and a number of people that I've spoken to who say that they saw something of enormous size, the size of a football field or something of that order, often moving at enormous speed or moving slowly and silently. These all seem to be common factors, but even after all of these years of similar reports in the United Kingdom, certainly, we're still no closer really to knowing what these things are.
We're not. It's a genuine mystery. We might never get an answer, or we might get an answer tomorrow, and that's one of the fascinating things about this, and that's one of the reasons why I stay involved and interested.
Right, and what do you plan to do next, Nick? What's the next project? Is it a work of fiction, another movie?
I'm working on a couple of fictional ideas, actually unrelated to UFOs. My last job was in security, so I'm thinking of writing a sort of terrorist-based techno thriller, but I'm also doing plenty of TV work here in the US, Ancient Aliens, NASA's Unexplained Files, and working on a couple of ideas for my own show, a sort of Nick Pope Investigates.
Right, I'm surprised actually you haven't done that already. The time will come, Nick,
Absolutely.
And when it does, if you need a narrator, here I am. Nick Pope, lovely to talk with you again. We'll catch up again in the future. Thanks very much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you very much. You too.